Welcome to another exciting episode of Ancient Anecdotes powered by Listen Cub. This is your host, Ramanathan Iyer.
This is Niti Ramanathan.
This is Anjan Iyer.
And this is Lalita Ramanathan.
In the last exciting episode of Ancient Anecdotes, it was on the eve of the great battle at Tellaru when Srimara invaded the Pallava territory and reached Tirukovilur. The grand Panguni Uttaram festival was only 5 days away.
Who was the sender? And why a pigeon? Why not a scout on horseback? What am I to make of this?
The sender could not have seen the army with his naked eyes. Why hasn't the watchtower at Tirukovilur sent word? The mountain. It calls to us. Can you feel it, Father?
Nandivarman paused, tears rolling down his eyes. He contemplated the significance of this small yet profound sign.
Thiru Annamalayani, Adiyen Maranduyaveno. Sukka, was it you, my lord?
Isn't the Pallava army made of any fiber of valor at all, O Father? Before Srimara gathers his forces again, let us surprise him. Let us take a battle to his doorstep. Vela!
And now we continue.
Vela, come here. I need you to travel to the Ganga kingdom in the west. Send word to King Prithvipati the first. Ask him to lend us 1,000 of his fastest cavalry for 2 months.
Velan hesitated.
But, my lord, Prithvipati will not side with either the Pallavas or the Pandyas. He has alliances with both the kingdoms.
Nrupatunga smiled.
Who said anything about fighting? We will only use the cavalry to chase the Pandyan forces.
Velan's brow furrowed.
But won't the Pandyas recognize the horses of the Ganga kingdom?
Nrupatunga grinned.
Then it's a good thing we are clothing them in Pallava armor. Now go, run with the wind.
Velan's smile lit up his face as he realized the brilliance of his king's plan. Velan ran off excitedly to his waiting steed and rode off. Nrupatunga then turned to another scout, Murugan, and said,
Muruga, you should go to Tirukovilur at once. Our people in Tirukovilur are under the leadership of the Chora Irukkuvelar.
But, my king, the Irukkuvelar is celebrating the Uttaram festival and won't agree to help us in the war.
Murugan looked lost and puzzled.
Muruga, I know this. The Irukkuvelar won't participate in our war. Besides, the Panguni Uttaram festival is in 2 days. The Pandyans will reach Tirukovilur around that time. Tirukovilur will celebrate the Uttaram festival with music and drums. I want you to tell the Irukkuvelar we don't want him to fight. We only want him to use war drums instead of temple drums in the festival.
What little sanity Murugan thought he had vaporized visibly.
But, my lord, the war drums are loud. Our people in Tirukovilur will think an invasion is coming, and the Velar is
Not going to war actually. I know. Exactly.
Nrupatunga said with a smirk.
Tell our subjects that their prince, Nrupatungavarman, wants them to test the drums as part of the festival. Even tell them that the Pallavan prince is offering a reward to the loudest drummer. One way or the other, I want the sound of the Irukkuvel drums at Tirukovilur to reach the Meenakshi Amman temple at Madurai.
Murugan agreed and left in confusion. But Nrupatunga was already turning to his commander, Perumal. He gripped the commander's shoulder firmly.
Perumal, take our best archers and split them into 3 groups to pin the Pandyans from 3 sides. Send them on horseback to cross the Pennai river and flank the fleeing Pandyan forces. They will have to pass through the forests of Viralimalai and Kodambalur to reach Madurai. These 2 states are allies to the Pandyas. Have the archers reach there ahead of time. Lay in wait and ambush any army that comes to the Pandyans' assistance.
Perumal looked skeptical.
My prince, what if the Pandyas take another route?
Nrupatunga smiled.
What do you think I'm going to use Prithvipati's horses for? The horses will herd the Pandyas to where we want them to go.
Excitement building, Nrupatunga rushed back to his father and explained the plan. As the prince left the temple praharam, the hefty boy, Toppan, stopped playing abruptly and called out to his younger brother.
Supa, our job here is done. I think the prince has gotten her father's message.
Suppan laughed and replied,
Yes, Anna. Time for us to leave, I guess.
Legend has it that the boys ran off into the temple, disappearing as mysteriously as they had appeared. Back in the Pallava king's royal camp, Nrupatunga burst into Nandivarman's tent, excitement writ on his eyes. Nandivarman recognized zest when he saw it.
Son, patience is virtue and...
But Nrupatunga cut his father short impatiently.
Yes, we need a plan. I know. Now listen, we may need a lot of things, but one thing I realized we don't need is brute force to win, father. We will guide the Pandyas to where we want them and strike at the right moment. Mother always told me guerrilla warfare does not rely on numbers but on cunning.
For the war-weary Nandivarman, this plan was not only a revelation, but it also filled him with pride for his son. He assessed the strategy with questions, trying to find weaknesses, poking and prying the plan from every angle. But Nrupatunga had thought of everything. At that moment, the king knew his son had become a leader. The boy had grown into a man. Nandivarman took off his crown and symbolically placed it on Nrupatunga's head.
Nrupatunga, you will be king of the southern states. All hail Nrupatunga Varman Pallavan! Kandamara, prepare the royal guard. I ride to Tondai Mandalam.
Nrupatunga looked aghast.
But why, father? Why Tondai Mandalam? I need you here.
Nandivarman looked proudly at his son.
I have seen your plan, son. You will win. You have no need for me. In fact, the Pallava kingdom has no more need for me anymore. I am going to retire. Lucky me.
Meanwhile, miles away, Sri Mara realized that his army was skimmed by the Pallava onslaught. Sri Mara had deftly guided his troops to Kotamarudur and was secretly laying low there. Suddenly, the sound of drums echoed in the distance, heavy and persistent. Sri Mara, sitting on a boulder beside his wounded leg, winced as the steady rhythm reached his ears. His eyes narrowed as he gazed toward the horizon where the city of lone and looming Tirukovilur lay. The sound of the drums was indeed coming from that precise location. The Pandyas had planned to go there, rest, regroup, gather strength before continuing the retreat to Madurai. But the unmistakable boom of war drums shattered that plan.
Tirukkovilur is prepared for war.
Srimara muttered, frustration clear in his voice.
The Pallavas are there already. We can't stay there.
His closest friend and his general Attan nodded solemnly.
The Pallava forces must have intercepted word of a retreat. What will we do now, my lord?
Srimara clenched his jaw in pain and thought for a moment.
The Pennai river is our only respite. But if we take the shorter route through Senguruchi, we'll be exposed in the open plains. Nrupatunga is clever. He'll be waiting for us there as well.
Attan frowned.
But what is the alternative? The route through Perambalur is difficult terrain, especially with your injury, my king. It is treacherous for us to make the journey safely. Our escape will be much slower.
Srimara sighed, the weight of his decision pressing down upon him.
Ariyalur. We'll go through Ariyalur and reach Tiruchirappalli that way. The Pallavas won't expect it.
So, the Pandyan army skirted Tirukkovilur and reached Ariyalur. Nrupatunga followed him with his horses like a shadow. He kept a faithful distance while still blowing his war horn as a warning. Srimara kept asking Attan,
Atta! Where are Pallavan horses? Why haven't they caught up with us? How far are they behind us?
Same as when we first set eyes on them. They are just over an hour behind us, my lord.
Attan reported.
Shouldn't they have overrun us by now?
Srimara wondered aloud, eyes narrowing in suspicion. Attan's face tightened, reflecting the king's unease.
Perhaps they are letting us go?
He suggested quietly, though even he didn't believe his own words. Srimara grunted in pain as he shifted, his wounded leg throbbing.
No! Nrupatunga is playing a game. A dangerous one. He is pushing me towards a trap. But I can't think clearly. This pain, it clouds my judgment.
His eyes flitted across the landscape, scanning the forests ahead.
I should have seen it earlier. Nrupatunga is not attacking because he doesn't want us dead yet. He is herding us, forcing us down the path. He's chosen. But what choice do I have now?
With a heavy sigh, Srimara gave the order.
Men! We'll take the Viralimalai route into Kodumbalur. Send the scouts to warn them about our arrival and call for help. The chieftains there are our allies and will come to our aid. We will have to move quickly but cautiously.
Perumal, meanwhile, galloped up to the helm of the attack formation that Nrupatunga was leading and bellowed over the sound of the war horns.
My king, why are we slowing down? We have enough horses. In a few hours, the Pandyans will be in the vicinity of Viralimalai feudatory. The chieftains there will come to the support of the Pandyan. We should overrun his army before that.
Nrupatunga looked back and asked with a twinkle in his eye.
Well, don't you want to snatch Viralimalai and Kodumbalur away from the Pandyans' alliance? This will only happen if we ambush the alliance as it comes to Srimara's assistance. Are your archers ready at Viralimalai?
Perumal's eyes widened in respect as he realized Nrupatunga had thought every possible step that could be conceived, and he had actually thought 10 steps ahead.
Yes, my liege. We have enough arrows to cripple the chieftains' forces as they come through using guerrilla attacks.
Nrupatunga warned Perumal.
We will overwhelm the chieftain's forces, but be mindful. The archers must not harm the king or his royal guards. Their job is to scatter and push them forward. If we kill Pandyan now, we will lose the chance to capture Kodumbalur. Srimara must be driven toward Kodumbalur. Have archers surround him and let him escape. As for Viralimalai's army, just cripple the forces, but do not wipe them out. Spare the chieftain's life so we can recruit the remainder of his forces and take Viralimalai. I want the lion flag flying over the fort of Viralimalai before we chase Srimara into Kodumbalur. Understood?
Perumal barked happily back.
As your highness pleases.
And so the wounded Pandya king limped forward with his royal guards, heading straight into the snare that Nrupatunga had laid. All the while, Nrupatunga's archers were waiting concealed in the dense forests of Viralimalai. Viralimalai's fort's drawbridges lowered, and a sizable army came to join Srimara through the forests from the south. But the Pallava archers were waiting for them. They knew the terrain well, and their bows were drawn. As Srimara approached Viralimalai to join the alliance forces, the first ambush came swiftly. Arrows rained down from the trees, piercing armor and sending his men into chaos. The archers had strict orders to merely scatter the royal guard. The Pandya king's royal guard scrambled for cover, but Nrupatunga's archers had them surrounded, leaving only a small route for Srimara and his men to go ahead and go forward to Kodumbalur. From his hiding place, Srimara watched in disbelief as his allied forces yielded to the massacring volleys of the arrows and the boulders.
This is no accident.
He muttered, his voice barely above a whisper.
He knew I would come this way.
Athan crouched beside him and nodded grimly.
He has been leading us into this trap all along. The drums, the delays, everything was part of his plan.
As the ambush ended and silence fell over the forest, Srimara's heart sank.
He's outmaneuvered me.
He admitted bitterly.
But I cannot go back now. I must reach Madurai.
A short distance away, Nrupatunga walked slowly ahead and watched Srimara escaping at a painfully slow pace in a distance. Perumal drew his sword to chase them, and Nrupatunga stopped him, looking at the ground. At Nrupatunga's feet lay wounded Pandya soldiers.
Perumal, hadn't I given strict instructions to only scatter and not kill any more of the Pandyan's forces?
But my lord,
Perumal exclaimed.
this is war. The Pandyans will not reciprocate any such mercy. He will...
Nrupatunga looked away helplessly.
I know. We need to take the Pandyan alive in Kodumbalur. Just arrange to take these Pandyan soldiers back to Tirukovilur for medical aid along with our wounded men. The rest of you. Let us keep moving. Our job is not done yet. Srimara needs to be captured.
Bellowed Nrupatunga. But the bane of war and death had already started scalding his spirit. The fort of Kodumbalur came to Srimara's aid, not expecting the ambush. The second ambush struck just as the depleted Pandya army reached Kodumbalur. The arrows came without warning, swift and deadly. Once again, what remained of Srimara's men fell, and once again, Srimara realized that Nrupatunga was waiting for him at every turn. Srimara's forces were in tatters, and his spirit was broken. With iron resolve, Nrupatunga systematically captured both Viralimalai and Kodumbalur. At the end of a weary chase, Nrupatunga finally surrounded the wounded Pandya. Srimara pulled down the royal fish flag from his chariot, exceeding that he had been bested. Little did he know that Nrupatunga would approach him with something totally unexpected. Nrupatunga got down from his horse with firm footing. He drew his sword and walked up to Srimara, gripping the sword as he swished and swiveled it adeptly. He swung, but the sword reached close to Srimara's neck and stopped there. Nrupatunga's hand went limp and he reined back the blow. Nrupatunga's thoughts were racing.
There are moments when you can't help but admire the fierce spirit of your opponent, but to witness that spirit humbled and subdued is a bitter sight.
His thoughts seemed to thunder in his skull.
And to top it all, if you also knew that you were the reason for this bitter sight.
The thoughts trailed off. Nrupatunga suddenly felt poor. He realized that he couldn't afford valor anymore. Nrupatunga felt something heavy when he started speaking, so he steadied himself, put the sword back into the scabbard, and spoke.
You fought bravely, Srimara.
Nrupatunga said.
But this battle is over. You may return to Madurai. I will not take your life.
Perumal, the Pallava general, was aghast.
My lord, he is a snake. He has killed so many of our...
Srimara, still on his knees, looked up with a mixture of surprise and interrupted Perumal.
Why spare me? He's right. I wouldn't extend you the same courtesy if you were in my shoes and I in yours. Why spare me?
He asked, his voice hoarse.
You could end this now.
Nrupatunga's eyes softened for a moment.
Because I am not interested in destroying you, only in ensuring peace.
Srimara raised his voice in an angry but helpless growl.
How did you know? How did you anticipate every move we made? From Tirukovilur to Arunachalam. You knew where we would strike. You outmaneuvered us at every turn. How could you possibly spare me now? Follow through and complete your duty, O crafty and intelligent Pallava. Give me the respite of a heroic death at my enemy's hands. Kill me.
Nrupatunga paused in his tracks without turning.
You may admire my tactics, Srimara, as much as I admire yours. But there is a difference. I cannot take credit for this victory. Now I realize that Shakkan's blessings have guided our path, and I am merely a recipient of that divine favor. It was not my hand that has bested you, but His divine grace that has allowed us to prevail. I cannot follow through with ending your life when it was never truly my victory to claim.
He paused and added,
Return to your people, Srimara, and heal. But no, if you ever come against us, I will not show such mercy.
With that, Nrupatunga turned and walked away, leaving the wounded king to contemplate his defeat. As though portending the end of the Pandya era, the sun sank low, casting a symbolic shadow over the Meenakshi temple as the Pandyas crossed into their kingdom's borders. With heavy hearts, Srimara's party, or rather what was left of them, rode towards Madurai. The sound of hoofs seemed to be muffling the somber mood. Srimara's pain was almost unbearable, but the bitter taste of defeat cut even deeper. Every now and then he let out a low grunt, a small but telling sign of the turmoil brewing inside him. Attan's voice was barely audible.
Sire, how did he know every move we would make? And how did we survive? Why did the Pallavas spare our life? Doesn't he know we will regroup and attack again?
Srimara, lost in thought, replied.
You wonder why we are still alive, Attan? Sometimes, even in the face of defeat, there is a deeper lesson to be learned. Nrupatunga says it was Shiva's blessing that guided him to victory. But tell me, do you think Shiva has not blessed us? All these years, Shiva has blessed us with the element of surprise. He blessed us with an adversary like Nandi Varman, who was as kind as he was resolute. Even now, Nrupatunga, though he knows we might attack again, spares us, spares our lives. He is the bigger king, yet he chooses peace over bloodshed.
Attan looked puzzled.
But sire, if Shivan blessed the Pallavas with victory, why not us? What made them more worthy of Shivan's blessing?
Srimara sighed deeply.
Who said Shivan hasn't blessed us? The Lord has gifted us an adversary who unites the subtle grace of divine favor with the ironclad dominance of the Pallava Empire. Nrupatunga Varman Pallava, a king who would give us a chase, beat us within an inch of our lives and let us know we are utterly defeated, only to spare us because he values peace. In granting us such a pardon, he has achieved victory in ways he could never understand. He has upheld his duty to win a bloody war and has also managed to end it peacefully. And what king can return to his land with the title of a defeated warrior? The embarrassment alone could kill me, even if these wounds don't.
Srimara paused and then continued.
I once thought that the great Nandi Varman was the better king. But young Nrupatunga has proved himself to be the better adversary. So yes, Attan, yes, Shivan has blessed us with peace, with our lives spared, with true spiritual knowledge, and with a great adversary. We may have lost the battle, but we have gained something far greater.
As the Pandyas rode on toward Madurai, Nrupatunga rode back towards Kanchi. His heart should have swelled with pride at the victory, but instead a strange weariness settled over him. He had won the battle, outwitted his enemy, and secured his kingdom. Yet there was no joy in the victory. His thoughts turned to his father Nandivarman, who had chosen to pass on the mantle of leadership to him. The old king had seen enough of war, and perhaps Nrupatunga was beginning to understand why. When he reached Kanchi, Nrupatunga found his father waiting for him.
You have returned victorious.
Nandivarman said, though there was no elation in his voice.
But I see in your eyes what I have felt for many years now.
Nrupatunga dismounted and walked toward his father.
I thought victory would feel different. But I am tired of war, father. I understand now why you chose to leave the battlefield behind.
Nandivarman nodded slowly.
War is a burden, my son. It takes more than it gives. You have proven yourself a leader today. But now you must decide what kind of a king you wish to be.
I want to lead our people to peace.
Nrupatunga replied quietly.
But I fear That war is the price we pay for peace, and this war with Pandyans will never end.
His father placed a hand on his shoulder.
It is the nature of kings to fight for their lands. But it is also within their power to seek peace. You're now king. You rule all the lands as far as the eye can see. You are rich beyond measure. But can you afford valor now? The choice is yours, my son.
Nrupatunga hung his head in sadly. As father and son stood together watching the horizon, Nrupatunga felt the weight of his father's crown on his head. He had outsmarted the Pandyas, but the thrill of war had faded. He was ready to lead, but not into another battle. And so, with a steady hand, Nrupatunga relinquished his throne to his half-brother Kampavarman and his nephew Aparajitavarman.
Appa, who is Kampavarman and Aparajitavarman, Pa?
By the time Nrupatunga had returned victorious, Nandivarman had married again, this time into the Chola dynasty, and his second descendant, Kampavarman, was born. Nandivarman gave away his northern kingdoms to Kampavarman. Kampavarman married Prithvipati's niece, a Ganga princess Vijaya, and had a son Aparajitavarman. It was Aparajitavarman who allied with Aditya Chola I against the Pandyas at Tiruparambayam much later.
That's it? Story over? But what happened to the king afterwards, Pa?
Grandad used to say that the fate of the great king remains a mystery. Some say Nrupatunga faded into obscurity, living out his days in peace far from the bloodshed that had marked his youth. Others believe he became a humble blacksmith in the great Pallava port at Veerampattinam, forging weapons for the wars he no longer wished to fight. The truth, however, is lost to history, just like the fleeting victories and the whispered plans that shaped the battles of a bygone era.
Appa, but did Shiva really send a pigeon to help the Pallavas?
We will never know for sure, Papa.
And were those children Ganesha and Murugan themselves in disguise?
We can never be sure.
Appa, I am still not able to see how Lord Shiva participated in the war directly and sided with the Pallavas. If Nandivarman III was a Shiva Bhakta, then so were the Pandyans, isn't it? I mean, the people who built the Meenakshi temple were also Shiva Bhaktas. How did Lord Shiva favor one devotee over another? How is it fair? What do you think, Kamakshi auntie?
That was running in my mind as well. But you know what? I was mind blown by Nandivarman's faith in his son. Nandivarman is a king who was able to protect his people only by waging one battle after another for a really long time. Here, he trusted not just Nrupatunga's ability to wage war or win it. He trusted that his son will realize the burden of war. He trusted a 16-year-old to side with peace after having won over his adversary.
Whoa!
Yeah, right? It's almost like Nandivarman knew of the choice that his son would make post-victory even before his son was clear with the plan. And Nrupatunga, he respected his father's words and charted out a clear plan. It's heartwarming to see that such level of trust and faith between a parent and his child is possible. Isn't it beautiful that they could trust each other to move towards the right choice and decision? That stood out really strong for me. Now, you tell me, Lalita, if you were Shiva, will you not rely on hearts like that?
That is a really good question. There is always more to the story than what history tells us. Have you heard the story of Andhakasuran?
Who, Pa?
Hear it first on
Ancient Anecdotes.
on your favorite podcast streaming providers.
Tune in for a brand new episode.